Me and my arrow, straighter than narrow. Wherever we go, everyone knows it's me and my arrow. Me and my arrow.
In this video, we're going to cover the Mystique Pond Chinook kennel trip to Loveland, Colorado, where we attended the 2023 United Kennel Club Chinook National Specialty Dog Show. It was a fun trip and a nice vacation, but we're also hoping to show people in the Chinook world what Daniela's kennel has been up to. Almost 30 Chinooks will be at the show, so not only will many Chinook owners get their first view of her Chinooks in person, but we will get an independent assessment, both by the judge and by the other Chinook owners, whether or not Daniela's breeding strategy is successful.
Oh yes, I will.
The Chinook is a pure American breed. It originated in New Hampshire and is its official state dog. It was started in the early 20th century by Arthur Treadwell Walden, an Arctic explorer and dog puncher. The founding member of the breed, named Chinook, was a big male dog that, because of his intelligence and good nature, was selected by Walden to be the lead dog of his team. This is Walden next to Chinook. Today, there are a lot of variants of Chinooks and much discussion about the relative merits of each, but here is the original dog who started it all. He sure looks like a good boy, doesn't he? And here are the dogs that we took with us to Loveland, Colorado. This is Juno, Enya, Kiana's attacking me, and Melina in a rare quiet moment. Chinooks are very rare, with perhaps 1,000 dogs worldwide and only a limited number of breedings each year, which is really unfortunate since they are great dogs to have in your life. As Walden realized, they're very smart and engaged. They're very friendly, great with people and especially children. And best of all, they are calm and quiet when you are, but are active and engaged once you get going. And I was ready to get going there. Here we are at Mystique Pond Farm at dinner time. Juno isn't eating because he already had his dinner, and he is a good boy who won't steal food from the others. The others are not so disciplined, so you need to be on your guard until every bowl is clean. That's Max, a 14-year-old house cat who doesn't care either way about all the Chinook hubbub in the house, and is showing his disdain by walking amongst the 4 dogs and proclaiming his presence by requesting his own dinner. He will get it. Kiana's in season, as you can see from the drops of blood on the floor. Dogs need to be intact to be shown in a dog show, so this is a standard occupational hazard for most dog handlers. The goal will be to show her at her best, to preserve her virtue in the midst of dozens of intact, young, and eager males, keep the blood spots off of the furniture in the hotels at which we are staying, and to stay sane throughout the process. Daniela is with Diana Fowler, who is a major figure in the Chinook world. She owns Southwind Chinooks, a famous kennel whose progeny have started many kennels across the country. 2 of her dogs, Uli and Blue, sired the Mystique Pond litters that produce Kiana and Melina. She's a valuable resource for anyone who wants to own or breed a Chinook. She even came up with a solution for Kiana's in-season issues. Traveling with 4 large Chinooks takes a lot of gear, so we got a trailer from U-Haul to carry it all. It looks, well traveled. This will be our route from Micanopy to Loveland and back again. It will take us through 13 states and 3 time zones. We'll be making multiple stops along the way, and we'll mostly be staying at Airbnbs that allow dogs. Traveling with 4 Chinooks can be tricky, as you can imagine, and you have to line things up to make sure that you aren't accidentally left out in the cold somewhere. But it is possible to travel with dogs, even 4 large ones. As you'll see, we stayed at a lot of nice places and had a lot of great meals in nice restaurants, and at all times we had all 4 dogs with us. Here we are, all ready to go with a car full of dogs. That's Melina, Enya, and Kiana and Juno's in the mix-up place. getting ready to leave Micanopy. It is about 9:40, and we should be in Nashville around 8 o'clock this evening, hopefully. Try to get a few shots on the road. If I don't, we'll see you in Nashville. I didn't get any shots on the trip to Nashville. The weather was poor, and we had to pay attention to the driving. It was an exhausting 9-hour trip, and when we arrived, all we could think about doing was crashing. The Chinooks read us well, and even though they might have wanted to run out and pillage the neighborhood, they detected that Daniela and I were too tired and are relaxing instead. The Airbnb had fully fenced in front and backyards, so we kept the front and back doors open and let the dogs go anywhere they wanted while we spent a quiet evening at home.
Coming up hard.
The next leg of our trip took us through 5 states: Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Missouri, and finally Kansas, where we will spend the next night in an Airbnb in Topeka. We will cross the Mississippi and Missouri rivers and go through some really green country, including the Mississippi Plateau and western coalfields in Kentucky, the Little Egypt region of southern Illinois, St. Louis, and the Till Plains and Ozark Highlands in central Missouri before crossing Kansas City into eastern Kansas. Another 9-hour trip, but if the weather holds up, maybe we can stop someplace on the way and rest. It had been raining just a few days earlier, so the scenery en route was especially lush and never got boring. And every so often you would pass an interesting historical marker, which to me always made it a little more interesting.
March them down the Lone Rock, said to look into that mine. March you down the Lone Rock.
We're also going through a bourbon-producing area. Daniela asked if I wanted to stop, but I couldn't see visiting a few bourbon distilleries and ever leaving. Better to keep going and celebrate after the dog show.
My darling, coming down the line. But it won't you roll down the line. But it won't you roll down the line. Yonder come my darling, coming down the line.
Here we are crossing the Tennessee River. This isn't the Tennessee River that runs along the border of Georgia and Tennessee, but rather a tributary of the much larger Ohio River, which demarcates the border between Kentucky and Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. The Ohio River served as a major shipping route for what, for the mid-19th century, was the western United States. It meets up with the Mississippi River at Cairo, Illinois, and thus you could make it from Pittsburgh to New Orleans by steamboat, which highlights why this area was so important in the Civil War.
Yonder come my darling, coming down the line.
This is Kiana giving me a wet willy, which is the signal that she would like a comfort stop. Looks like we're going to have to visit a rest stop when we get to Illinois.
The bank boss is a hard man, a man you all know well. And if you don't get your task done, he's going to give you hallelujah. Carry you to the stock keep, says on the floor you'll fall. Very next time they call on you, you'll bet you'll have your call.
This is our first exposure to Illinois. It's a typical rest stop, lots of places to walk the dogs and a lot of greenery. Looks good. That is, until we tried to use the bathroom.
Yonder come my darling, coming down the line.
On entering, you were told that Illinois does not allow smoking, pets, or guns in the building, and you can't drink the water. Also, there are 2 urinals in the men's bathroom and neither work. There are 3 toilets, although only 2 of them are unclogged, and none of them could be considered clean. Well, that was an enlightening Illinois experience. Anyway, here we are crossing the Mississippi River into St. Louis, the state of Missouri, and the western United States. And this is the Mississippi. It's played a central role in U.S. culture, and I get a twinge of excitement just looking at it. Luckily for us, our route took us around St. Louis and its traffic, so we were soon back in open country again. One of the things we noticed while looking for rest stops for the dogs was the location of a winery in central Missouri, just west of Columbia. It looked interesting and it was dog friendly, so we decided not only to rest the dogs there, but to sample their wines. I hadn't expected seeing grapevines in the middle of Missouri, but we are open to anything, and truth be told, I'm kind of excited about trying out their wines. A Frame Bistro and Winery near Columbia, Missouri. That's Daniela and the Four Monsters. And that is a beautiful river view. Not sure what river it is. And this is a great sign. Do not throw objects over. And if Elena doesn't start behaving herself, we might violate that. The A Frame Winegarden had a selection of both red and white wines, as well as a kitchen that provides sandwiches. Since I'm the designated driver, I don't get to drink anything, but Daniela did, and liked it so much that she bought 3 bottles. I bought her a tank top, which she liked so much that she lost it before we got back to Florida. Anyway, the next stop is Kansas. We stayed overnight at an Airbnb in Topeka, Kansas. That was at best marginal for our purposes, but it worked out, and we got back on the road again early the next morning. Rather than dwell on our issues with the residents, let's focus on the route we will be taking. We'll be heading straight across the Kansas Plains, where we will pass by historic Fort Riley, a key fort in the Indian Wars built to protect travelers on the Oregon, California, and Santa Fe trails, and where George Custer was based for a while. We will also pass Abilene, the boyhood home of the 34th President of the United States, Dwight David Eisenhower. We will continue on into Colorado until we hit Denver, where we turn north towards Loveland. Peace at last. We made it to our hotel rooms in Loveland, Colorado. This is my room, and it looks like I'm all ready for a nap before dinner tonight. Our first night, we went to dinner with others from the Chinook Owners Association. This is Nancy Stevenson Burns, who owns Mystique Pond Bella Luna Isla Blue, also known as Luna. Luna is a daughter of Enya and sister to Melina. Susan Burrell is a wonderful professional dog handler who assessed Enya's second litter. Mary Malkiel has owned many Chinooks over the years and will be showing Laughing Mountain Aspen Sealy at the specialty. Sitting next to Daniela is Karen Schiller, and this is Dave Schiller, the owners of the Mountain Thunder Kennel who produced Enya. The first day consisted of informative learning and training sessions, including how to show a dog, for new handlers such as myself, conducted by Sue Burrell and Dave Schiller. Here, David is helping Daniela with her technique with Kiana. These lessons were very helpful, as the majority of the people at the show had either limited or no experience showing a dog. The dog show lesson was followed by some fun where Chinooks and their owners could participate in goofy games. I don't have pictures of this as I was participating, but there were egg tosses, peanut butter licking contests, and Simon Says. Kinda silly, but that was the point, and it was a lot of fun. This was followed by a lecture on dog reproduction given by Dr. Greg Burns from Colorado State Veterinary School. As you could see, although Forrest Lyons is paying close attention, Russell the Chinook isn't interested in the slightest. Wait until he grows up, though. He'll do it instinctively. We next had a great seminar by Sarah Piano, who is a professional dog puncher. She showed everyone how to get started with teaching your Chinook how to be trained for pulling carts and sleds. She was very generous with not only her time, but with her sledding equipment. She had a lot of harnesses that she no longer used, and so she decided that she would share them with the people at the show. Daniela got harnesses for both Melina and Kiana, and here Sarah is fitting Renji for a harness. I can't say that he looks happy with the idea, but with Sarah's approach, I am sure Christine will have Renji pulling away in full harness in no time. Sue Burrell then gave us a talk on how to assess the Chinook. Here she is in the lecture part, where she described how a judge would assess a Chinook in the ring, what the standards are, and how the judge will assess each Chinook against those standards. In addition, she assessed 2 Chinooks randomly selected from the audience, including Mystique Pond Chinook. A very helpful and informative talk and demonstration. Sue's talk finished off the first day, and many of us retired to a dinner at McGraff's. Daniela had reserved the complete patio for the group, and we filled it. It was a relaxing dinner with a lot of dogs underfoot. Many of the people brought their Chinooks with them, including us, who took all 4 of the Mystique Pond Chinook kennel with us. So here we are on the second day of the show, and look who stopped by. It's Alex Kelly, an old friend from the Florida horse world. She lives in Colorado now, and recently got married to a really nice guy. Congratulations to her. So now today, the competitions begin. After the competition, there was a reception with a cash bar and a banquet. The cash bar was good. As long as you ordered doubles, the drinks were strong enough. It also gave us all a chance to get to know each other in a relaxed environment. I myself got to chat with the judge, David Kittredge. We actually ran into each other before. He judged a competition in Jefferson, Georgia, where Mystique Pond Chinooks competed. When I said ran into each other, I meant that literally. I confessed to him that while I was leading Enya on the diagonal, I was concentrating so much on getting it right that I almost ran into him physically. He was very understanding, but there was nothing more embarrassing than running into the judge. When we chatted, he didn't remember the incident and thought it amusing, and allowed me to buy him a drink as a belated apology. The banquet that followed was fine. The speeches by Dave Schiller, Brendan Aldrich, Sue Burrell, and David Kittredge were great. Kittredge in particular went out of his way to tell everyone how impressed he was with the show and the dogs, and that he would love to judge them again. The food, however, was pretty bad all in all. It was probably worth it nonetheless, as having the dinner at the show site meant that we could stay with our dogs and that there were none of the standard distractions that you have in a public restaurant. No wine, though. Our route to Silver Plume was fairly short, only 2 hours or so. But there is a huge elevation gain. Silver Plume is over 9,000 feet above sea level, so the car is going to have to work.
Lots of things you ought to know. Take a tip from one who's traveled and never stopped a rambling around.
Guess what?
Get the Roman fever, you never want to settle down, boy. You never want to settle down.
Silver Plume is a very small, old, rural mining town dating from the Colorado Silver Rush in the latter part of the 19th century. The town was founded in 1869 near the silver mines west of Georgetown, Colorado. Only a couple of buildings were built in 1869, and initial development of the town was slow. But in 1872, Silver Plume had become a town of around 500 residents with a thriving commercial district. The town continued to grow as the silver industry boomed in the area, reaching over 2,000 residents before 1893. Its fortunes subsequently waxed and waned over the years, and now it is a small town of 200 or so people, sustained primarily by the tourism industry. It seems to be very successful. When we arrived, the streets were filled with cars and people walking around enjoying the sights. Our first stop was the Bread Bar, a small bar that specialized in interesting mixed drinks. They were really great, and indeed we visited 3 times in our 2-day stay and tried every drink on the menu. Nancy Stevenson Burns came with us. We had a spare bedroom in our Airbnb, and she was up for a short holiday, so she came with Luna. This is the view from the street outside of our Airbnb. You can get a beautiful view of the surrounding mountains, including a trail up the mountain at the head of the road where we lived. This is the actual Airbnb that we stayed at. An older home, but really comfortable and convenient to the Bread Bar, just around the corner.
Mexico, and I never tried to save no money. Now I got no place to go, boy.
This is the Plume Coffee Bar, located just down the street. It was a great place to get a really good cup of coffee early in the day.
Pay attention to what I say. There's another train a-coming. Yes, I'll be on my way. If you wanna do me a favor, lay me down and die. Just dig my grave beside the railroad so I can hear the train.
This is a view of a different part of town. I guess you could call it the suburbs, even though it was only a 3-minute walk from the Airbnb. At the end of the street, you can see Interstate 70, a major highway that passes through just outside of town. Despite the busy highway, you can't really hear the traffic. This is Cherokee Creek, which passes through the center of town and apparently was an important source of water for the town back in its heyday. Indeed, there was a brewery in town back then, and it used waters from this creek to produce beer for the townsfolk. This is the Windsor Hotel, which I would have loved to stay in if it hadn't been for the fact that they likely would have freaked out over 4 large Chinooks staying in their rooms. It's an historic hotel dating back to the late 19th century, and as you can see, it has changed very little since then. Maybe if we come back, we can try staying here. We did a lot of hiking here, although it was a bit difficult since I for one had a little trouble adjusting to the elevation. It was also hot, and I'm not sure that the dogs could have lasted on a long hike. Here's Nancy and Daniela with Luna, Enya, Juno, Kiana, and Melina during a break. But the best break would be the bread bar, so after the hike, we stopped by for a quick pick-me-up. The dogs didn't seem to mind. We came back a third time later that day with Alex and her husband Derek. After a quick drink, we took off for Idaho Springs, where we had dinner at the MTN Steakhouse. The dinner was reasonable, but it suffered the fate, I think, of many higher-scale restaurants and vacation resorts. They get the price right, expensive, the presentation correct, flashy, but the food doesn't quite make it up to the standard that you would normally get for that price and presentation. That being said, it was fine, and everybody had a good time. The next day, we said goodbye to Alex, Eric, and Nancy and Luna, who went their separate ways back home, and Daniela, Juno, Enya, Kiana, Melina, and I headed south to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I hadn't been to Santa Fe in years, so this was exciting. We would also be staying at an Airbnb on the outskirts, where there would be a lot of local hiking trails. In addition, Daniela tells me that Santa Fe has a lot of nice restaurants, so I'm looking forward to trying some southwestern cuisine. The drive down was uneventful and beautiful, with rolling hills and what looked like mesas. The weather was spectacular. You really couldn't ask for a nicer day. The U-Haul was behaving itself, limiting the noise it made to the occasional rattle. And the dogs were quiet too, perhaps exhausted not only by the show, but the hiking at altitude in Silver Plume. I am sure they are looking for the relaxation that we're going to get in Santa Fe. And here we are in our Airbnb. It's gorgeous. Here is the view looking out from the living room. There is no enclosed backyard, but the terrain goes back a long way, so we can do a lot of exploring with the dogs. There is also a lot of wildlife, including this jackrabbit. We had to keep the dogs on the leash because of this. Enya certainly would have run off after it, and it would have been difficult to get her back. Unfortunately, one thing we forgot to think about was that the desert was filled with cactus and other spiky succulent plants. Since the dogs had never seen these, they would plow ahead without thinking, and Daniela had to spend a lot of time taking thorns out of their paws. They are pretty, though. Out for a walk, or what I call a Micanopy sleigh ride, on one of the trails near the house. So back in the house, Juno has already decided where he wants to sleep. When we travel, the dogs get to pick where they want to sleep, then Daniela does, and finally me. I usually get the smaller rooms because of this. Afterwards, we went into Santa Fe to have dinner at the TerraCotta Wine Bistro. It was a wonderful place. Although there wasn't much room for dogs at the small porch in which we were seated, the owner went out of her way to accommodate us, and we very much appreciated it. In addition, the food and wine were outstanding. Here are Daniela and I enjoying a relaxing glass of wine before dinner. Interesting things happen in Santa Fe. Here's a parade of people wearing, well, whatever they're wearing, and riding by on bicycles. Not sure what that is all about, but they were having fun, which is the important thing. Back home in the house, all of the Chinooks have decided to sleep in the master bedroom, so I guess it's the small guest bedroom for me again. The next day, we decided to visit downtown Lamy, which apparently had a nice bar. We found the place all right, but as it turns out, the whole place is almost completely deserted. Interestingly, there is a working Amtrak station there, although it is not staffed. The station is apparently on the Southwest Chief Line, which is the old Super Chief line that the old Hollywood stars would use to go back and forth from the East Coast. There is a restaurant and a bar here, but I find it hard to believe that this small station gets enough traffic to justify having facilities such as these. But the station is well kept up and includes a small museum, although that too was closed when we visited. Karen Schiller recommended that we try the Mexican food in New Mexico, so we found a highly rated restaurant in Santa Fe named La Choza. It had good strong margaritas and were very accommodating with our dogs. The food was also outstanding. Daniela ordered enchiladas with red chili sauce with a fried egg on top, which was Karen's favorite, and she really enjoyed it. After lunch, we went back home for a quick walk with the dogs before dinner. For dinner, we went to another nice restaurant in Santa Fe, called the 315 Restaurant and Bar. A wonderful restaurant with wonderful food and a staff very accommodating for dog owners.
Hace tiempo, pero se llegó el momento de perder. Tú tenías mucha razón, le hago caso al corazón y me muero por volver. Y volver, volver, volver.
The next leg of our journey took us to Lubbock, Texas. This drive took us through some historically relevant places, including Fort Sumner, where Billy the Kid was shot by Pat Garrett, and Clovis, where Buddy Holly and the original Crickets recorded their first hits. The view consisted mostly of desert plains. I felt like we were traveling through a scene from a Larry McMurtry novel. Indeed, you become impressed with how well he described this area of the country.
hace tiempo, pero se llegó el momento de perder. Tú tenías mucha razón, le hago caso al corazón y me muero por volver. Y volver, volver, volver a tus brazos otra vez. Llegarías a donde estés y yo sé perder.
The Airbnb in Lubbock wasn't as nice as the other places, but they did have a pool table, so Daniela and I played a few rounds of 9-ball before dinner.
Every day it's a getting closer.
One thing that I had to do beforehand was to pay homage to the great Buddy Holly, who was born in Lubbock, Texas, and, along with Joe B. Malden and Jim Allison, formed the rock group The Crickets. Together they recorded a series of rock classics, including Peggy Sue, Oh Boy, and their biggest hit, That'll Be the Day. While on a tour in early February 1959, a small plane carrying Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper crashed into a cornfield near Clear Lake, Iowa on takeoff, killing all three, as well as the pilot. Holly's body was brought back to Lubbock, where he was buried in the city cemetery. As a big Buddy Holly fan, I had to visit his gravesite.
It's a getting closer, going faster than a
It is a tradition to leave a guitar pick on Buddy Holly's grave, and so I did.
railway. Hey, hey, hey.
Our next leg took us from Lubbock to San Antonio through the heart of western Texas oil country. I really don't know much about this area, but I figured we'd see a lot of oil and natural gas wells, and we weren't disappointed.
Every day it's a getting closer, going faster than a roller coaster. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, hey, hey. Love like yours will surely come my way.
Here we are at the Airbnb in San Antonio. It was a really nice place, well decorated with fenced-in back and front yards. It was unfortunately too hot to keep the doors open like we did in Nashville, but it was great to be able to let the dogs out to relieve themselves instead of having to walk them each time. For dinner, I got takeaway from the restaurant we were going to go to, La Frite Belgian Bistro. And it was just as well. They had a few tables outside in the sunlight, and it would have been sheer torture for us to be out there eating, to say nothing about how the dogs would have felt. The food was really good though, and I even bought a bottle of wine there to bring back. Our next stop was Lafayette, Louisiana. The reason we stopped there instead of just pushing through was because there was this really nice dog-friendly restaurant, and I figured that we could have a relaxing dinner there. 1 week before the trip, it closes and we were stuck. In addition, I couldn't get a good Airbnb there, so we were in a La Quinta near a highway. Oh well. We did get one souvenir from Texas. On the way to Louisiana, a car ahead of us kicked up a large rock which hit us on our windshield, and well, that is a pretty nice crack. I got it fixed after we returned to Florida, but until then, we got to watch this crack get larger and larger. The next leg is a short 3 to 4 hour drive from Lafayette to Dauphin Island, Alabama. We could have made Micanopy in one day, but we wanted to stop off at Dauphin Island as it has many dog-friendly beaches and Juno really loves the beach, and we wanted to do something nice for him. Dauphin Island is a small island that guards the mouth of Mobile Bay. During the Civil War, the way into the harbor just to the right of Dauphin Island was blocked by mines, called torpedoes back then. When Rear Admiral David Farragut took the West Gulf blockading squadron of the Federal Fleet into Mobile Bay, he ordered his fleet through this gap despite the minefield, shouting, "Damn the torpedoes! Full speed ahead!" Of course, we don't know if he really said that, but the Federal Fleet did get through the gap despite the minefield and captured Mobile, and that phrase made a great slogan for Abraham Lincoln's re-election campaign. So why quibble about a good thing? This is the causeway to Dauphin Island. One thing that we hadn't considered was that we were staying during the July 4th holiday, which meant the whole island was filled with tourists and it was impossible to get dinner reservations anywhere. We ended up having to travel off the island, which was completely fine since we ended up at this really nice casual restaurant and bar called the Pelican Reef. It was fantastic. The food was really good and the drinks were fantastic. The bartender really knew her stuff. And finally, she let us bring all 4 dogs inside the bar so we didn't have to suffer through the heat mosquitoes outside. The regular customers at the bar were really friendly and fun to talk to. It was a great evening.
Whoa, the boogaloo boogie.
Early the next morning, we took the dogs to the East End public beach to avoid the holiday crowds, and it was perfect. We spent a long time there until more people started arriving. The dogs were exhausted, though, and they slept all the way home.
Last, just kicking down the cobblestones with the fun of feeling groovy. Ba-da-da-da-da-da, feeling groovy. Hello, lamppost, what you knowin'? I come to watch you fly.
Home at last! No rest, though.
No rhymes for me. Do it and do feeling groovy. Feeling groovy. I got no deeds to do, no promises to keep. I'm dappled and drowsy and ready to sleep. Let the morning time drop all its petals on me. Life, I love you, all is groovy.